Wet snow is falling on your shoulders. Not the light powder that brushes off with a sweep of your hand. Heavy, clinging, saturated flakes that melt against the warmth of your body and soak into every fiber they touch. The temperature hovers just below freezing. Wind cuts through the valley. You are hours from shelter. The moisture creeping through your outer layer has already begun stealing heat from your core faster than your body can replace it. You feel the cold spreading across your shoulders where snow is heaviest, then down your back, then deeper toward your spine. By nightfall, if nothing changes, you will not make it to dawn. This is not speculation, this is thermodynamics, and 20,000 years ago, during the depths of the last ice age, this scenario played out constantly across frozen landscapes where humans somehow made their home. The difference between those who survived and those who did not came down to a single principle. Not fire, not shelter, clothing. Specifically, a system so sophisticated that researchers today still study its logic. They call it the grease seal layering rule. And once you understand how it worked, you will never think about cold weather the same way again. Let me put you in that world completely. The Ice Age was not a single frozen moment. It was a dynamic period spanning tens of thousands of years, with climate fluctuations that shifted conditions within generations. But during the coldest phases, when glaciers miles thick covered much of the northern hemisphere, humans lived in environments that tested any survival system to absolute limits. Temperatures regularly dropped to -30, -40, sometimes colder during endless polar nights. But here is the detail most people miss entirely. Extreme dry cold was not the deadliest threat. Wet cold was. And wet cold happened constantly. Snow fell in different forms depending on atmospheric conditions. Sometimes it came as light powder that stayed frozen on contact. This was manageable. It could be brushed away before melting. But when temperatures hovered near freezing, or when body heat radiating through clothing raised surface temperature just enough, snow became something far more dangerous. It melted, slowly at first, then faster as more accumulated and compressed. Water crept into fibers, into hair, into every microscopic gap in whatever you wore. And water steals heat with brutal efficiency that most people fail to appreciate until they experience it firsthand. This is the physics that killed people. Still air is an excellent insulator. Dry fur traps air between its fibers, creating a boundary layer of warmth your body generates and the material preserves around you. But water destroys this completely. Moisture fills those air pockets. It eliminates insulating gaps. It transforms protection into a heat sink pressed against shivering skin. Water conducts heat away from your body roughly 25 times faster than still air. Add wind to this equation, and you have a perfect killing mechanism that works relentlessly. Wind strips away your boundary layer entirely, accelerating heat loss beyond what metabolism can possibly replace. Dry means warm. Wet means death. Ice Age people understood this with clarity born from watching it happen. And they engineered their clothing systems specifically to prevent it. Here is where myth-busting begins. If you picture Ice Age clothing as rough animal skins draped over shoulders like blankets, you have it completely wrong. That image comes from fiction, not archaeology. What the archaeological record actually tells is a different story entirely. Bone needles, thousands of them, recovered from sites across Europe and Asia. Some so fine they rival quality sewing implements from any era. Hide scrapers with wear patterns showing repeated processing of same materials over extended periods. Awls for punching precise holes. Evidence of complex stitching that created fitted garments, not loose wraps. These were engineers working with available materials to solve problems that would kill them if they failed. The grease seal layering rule was the solution they developed. Start with the hide itself. Raw animal skin is not waterproof. It absorbs moisture readily. Left untreated, it would soak through in wet snow just like anything else. But processed hide, scraped meticulously to remove flesh and fat, then treated with specific substances, behaves very differently. And the key treatment was grease, rendered animal fat. Animal fat rendered slowly over low fire produces a substance that transforms hide into something approaching truly waterproof. You work the grease deep into material with your hands, kneading and massaging it into fibers, forcing it into the microscopic structure of skin over patient hours. Fat fills gaps and pores. It coats surfaces. It creates a hydrophobic barrier, causing water to bead rather than soak. When wet snow lands on properly greased hide, something remarkable happens. Instead of melting and penetrating, it sits on the surface in distinct droplets. It can be brushed away before body heat turns it to soaking water. The grease seal buys time. In survival, time is everything. But here is the counterintuitive part most would get fatally wrong. You do not grease every layer. The grease seal layering rule is about strategic application, not total saturation. The outer layer takes treatment. This is your sacrificial barrier. The surface contacting snow and wind directly. You want this layer hydrophobic. You want moisture to bead and fall away. But inner layers serve different purposes entirely. They need to breathe. They need to allow moisture from your body, the unavoidable sweat and vapor that comes from being warm-blooded, to move outward through the system and escape. This is where layering logic becomes critical. Imagine the system from skin outward. Against your body, you want something dry and relatively loose-fitting. This creates a microclimate of still air warmed by your own heat. Materials varied by region and availability, but soft brain-tanned hides with fur facing inward often served this purpose. Fur trapped countless tiny pockets of air. Relative looseness allowed vapor to migrate outward. Middle layer provided bulk insulation. This was about loft, creating volume filled with dead air space. Thicker furs from winter coat animals worked well. Sometimes multiple layers instead of one thick piece. Sometimes vegetation like dried grasses or moss tucked between hide layers. The key was maintaining that loft. Compression destroyed it. If you packed insulation tight, you squeezed out air that made it work. This is why fit mattered precisely. Garments were tailored for maintaining appropriate space between layers. Too tight, and you lost insulation through compression. Too loose and warm air escaped, replaced by cold. The outer layer faced elements directly. This received grease treatment. This was stitched with tightest seams using sinew thread from animal tendons, dried to incredible strength, pulled through holes punched by bone awls and drawn tight until seams became nearly wind-proof. When researchers replicate these techniques using period-appropriate materials, results confirm what archaeology suggests. Properly stitched and greased outer layers shed snow, block wind, and buy hours of survival time in conditions otherwise lethal. But the system required constant, active management. This is where most would fail. You cannot put on clothing and forget about it. Wet snow environments demand active maintenance throughout every hour outside. Outer layer accumulates snow constantly. You brush it away regularly before it melts. You check cuffs, collar, every opening where snow might enter. You adjust hood positioning to prevent breath from condensing on cold inner surfaces. Breath frost is a hidden killer. Warm, moist air from lungs hits cold fabric and freezes there. That frost melts later against skin when conditions change. Suddenly, inner layer is wet from inside out. Venting becomes essential during exertion. If you work hard, you sweat. Sweat soaks inner layers. Wet inner layers lose insulation value immediately. You cannot strip clothing to cool down because exposed skin loses heat catastrophically. The solution was controlled venting, opening collars slightly, loosening cuffs, allowing just enough air exchange to carry moisture outward without dumping accumulated warmth. This required constant attention, constant adjustment, constant body awareness. Here is where the biggest mistake happened. Sweating. Not light perspiration, but deep soaking sweat from working too hard in too much clothing. This was potentially fatal and everyone knew it. Once inner layers saturated, no outer protection could save you. Moisture sat against skin, stealing heat constantly, impossible to remove without fire and shelter and extended time you might not have. Ice Age hunters learned to moderate effort precisely. Work in controlled bursts. Rest before overheating. Remove outer layers during high exertion. Add them back during rest. Keep inner sanctum dry at all costs because that was where survival lived or died. Trade-offs of the grease seal were real and unavoidable. Rendered fat smells. There is no avoiding this. Rancid undertones developed, mixed with smoke from processing fires. Dirt adhered to greased surfaces readily. Garments required regular retreatment as grease wore away. Processing demanded time and fuel and animal resources not always abundant. But survival math was simple and unforgiving. Smell meant alive. Clean meant dead. Failure modes cascaded with terrifying speed once started. A single wet cuff could begin fatal process. Moisture wicked up the arm. Spread to shoulder. Reached core. Collar left open during snowfall, admitted flakes that melted against neck. Sitting on wet ground soaked lower layers from below. Each mistake compounded. Cold spread deeper. Movement became clumsy. Judgment deteriorated. Once hypothermia began, recovery required resources that might not be available anywhere. Survivors were those who prevented cascade before it ever started. Who understood fire was not salvation if already wet. Flames could warm outer surfaces while inner layers remained cold and damp. Who knew clothing management was constant awareness, never a completed task? Who learned these lessons from those before? Refined over generations until knowledge was natural as breathing. Archaeological evidence confirms sophistication beyond doubt. Sites show dedicated hide processing areas. Hearth placement suggests controlled smoke exposure for preservation. Ash layers indicate extended occupation where maintenance routines were clearly practiced. Bone needle caches prove specialized toolkits existed for clothing work. Consistency across vast distances and time tells us this was cultural technology, taught and passed down with same care given to any survival knowledge. When researchers replicate these methods using only period materials, results speak clearly. Properly prepared systems work. They keep people alive in conditions that should kill. Engineering is sound because it had to be. The only requirement beyond materials is knowledge. This makes the grease seal layering rule more than technique. It represents human intelligence applied to impossible problem and winning. Our ancestors faced conditions seemingly designed to kill them. They had no synthetic fabrics, no chemical waterproofing, no manufactured insulation. They had animal skins, rendered fat, bone needles, sinew, and remarkable minds. It was enough. They crossed continents in these clothes. They hunted in blizzards. They built cultures in landscapes of killing cold. The lesson is about what humans accomplish when survival demands intelligence rather than purchased equipment. Every seam stitched, every hide greased, every hour managing moisture was sophisticated engineering by people as capable as anyone today. If this changed your thinking, hit the like button now. Subscribe and tap the notification bell. Comment what Ice Age topic you want next. Share with someone who loves history or survival. Your engagement makes this possible.